to have you here, and a big welcome to our J-Fam joining us online today. As you have heard, this is our Voices weekend, and it is shaping up to be one of my favorite weekends that we get to have around here. It's going to be your opportunity to hear from some up-and-coming leaders in our church. And if you've been here for any length of time, you've heard us talk about our passion to reach our region, what we call Journey City. There are 1.8 million people in a 30-mile radius of this building, our Newark location where I am right now. And we've got a passion to reach them with real church for real people, the life-giving message of Jesus. And we know that it requires people, a lot of people just like so many of you who are already serving on our J team, and people like some of our leaders that you're going to get to hear from this weekend. And that passion for developing leaders, helping people see more in themselves than they may see, really comes from the heart of our lead pastor, Mark, and not just a heart for developing people. I mean, he's got a determination for doing it, and it's why we have something here called our Journey Leadership Institute, and we've started that in 2016, and as of today, we've had over 125 leaders graduate from a program in Journey Leadership, and then we got a couple of them in the room. Everybody you're going to hear from today is a graduate or about to be a graduate of Journey Leadership Institute, and here's what I know about some of them right now. They may be feeling a little bit or a lot of bit nervous. I don't know, a little bit, a lot of bit, somewhere in the middle? All right, so they're somewhere in the middle. Here's what I know. The first time that I ever got to lead a host moment from stage, I was very nervous, all right? So they're like professionals up here, but I was very nervous. I was leading a host moment, and I read a verse, and at the end of the verse, I said, that was a verse from 1 Corinthians. Now, some of you are like awkward chuckling because some of you know there is a book in the Bible, and it's called in Christianese 1 Corinthians, but really there's just a 1, and then it says Corinthians, so I didn't know. I was new to my faith, and I walked off stage very confidently, and my husband was like, it's 1 Corinthians, not 1 Corinthians. But here's what I know. You guys are going to be a better audience than that. I can tell already, all right? So I want you to engage with them, laugh along, and all month long we've been in this series called Time of Your Life. And so each of them are going to share something that they are learning in their time with God lately. And we've been praying about this for weeks. And I'm really confident that what God has put on their heart to share is not just a word for them, it's a word for some of you today. And I hope that you're going to leave encouraged and inspired. So we're going to get into it. First person you're going to hear from is Alyssa Wilkinson, who's our Journey Leadership Institute Evening Program Director. And I can't wait for you to hear from her. Alyssa is one of my very best friends, known her for over a decade, and one of the best things is just watching her not just grow in her leadership, but really step into the calling that God has for her and helping to connect those dots for so many other leaders in our church. And then you're going to get to hear from one of our J group leaders. He's one of our young adults area coordinators, Josh Watson. So if you are thinking, man, that kid looks smart. Fun fact, Josh graduated from the University of Delaware yesterday. And he's so smart. He's an engineer. I can't even describe to you what he does. He told me about his thesis, which was like 172 pages. 176. And I said, Josh, the only thing I would understand is not even the title page. It's just your name on the title page. I think that's the only thing that I would understand. But he's got a huge heart for God and just making such a difference in our young adults here. So I can't wait for you to hear from him. And then last but not least, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mark McDonald, everybody. Mark is one of our leads on our worship team and part of Journey City Music. And here's what I know about Mark. Anytime that he opens his mouth, I want to listen. I'm like, I could listen to that voice all day because best of all, I mean, he loves Jesus in a deep way. And I know that today he's going to encourage you to love Jesus a little bit deeper as well. So you guys ready to get into it? Help me welcome Alyssa, everybody.
All right. How are you guys feeling? Good? All right, so like the front half of the room is feeling good, the back half, not so much. Well, I am just so grateful to have the opportunity to get to share with you. But before we jump into that, I just want to take a moment and honor Pastor Mark and our teaching team. It really is it's such a privilege to get to serve alongside you and learn from you, not just in the way that they communicate, but the way that they love and pastor our church. I mean, aren't you guys so grateful for our teaching team? Now, when I was growing up, one of my favorite things were vacations to the beach. And while I loved everything about being on the water, my favorite part about being on the beach was seashell hunting. I made it my mission. I was like, I'm gonna find a better seashell than the last seashell that I found. And one time we were on this particular vacation, my brother, my dad, and I, we went to go on the hunt, right? We were walking down the beach, and after about 2 minutes, because that's how long my attention span lasts, I was like, you know what? I'd rather go boogie boarding. I'm done with the seashell hunting. And so because we hadn't gone that far, my dad was like, okay, just make sure you tell your mom before you get in the water so she can see you. But by that point, my mom had started reading a book, so her face was covered. And instead of walking up to her, I walked right past her, and then I kept walking, and then I kept walking, and several hours pass, and I come to this conclusion. I'm like, all right, I'm lost. This is what my parents tried to tell me about, and I clearly did not listen to them, and it was terrible. Has anybody here ever been lost before? All right, a few of you, so you know what I'm talking about. Now, obviously, I was found, again, this isn't a Lifetime movie. My parents ended up finding me. But for those hours on the beach, I was so scared, wondering, when is it gonna happen? And whether you have physically been lost before, and even whether or not you buy into the whole Jesus thing yet, I think we all can identify with the feeling of being lost. We thought that once we graduated high school, we would get into our top choice college, but then the rejection email comes because they won't even pay for postage. And we're like, what do I do now? Or maybe we finally find the person that we're gonna spend the rest of our lives with, and we're like, this is a dream come true. And then a year in, you're like, where is the person I fell in love with? Or maybe even you are looking for that dream job and you finally get it and you're like, yes, this is my ticket out of my hometown. And then it turns out that the paycheck isn't quite worth the stress it brings. And feeling lost, this is not a new feeling in the world. In fact, we read story after story of people in the Bible who are not that different from you and me. They find themselves in situations where they feel lost. And today I want us to look at a couple of verses in a book called Habakkuk. And if your first thought is Haba what? You are not alone. I watched a lot of YouTube videos trying to figure out how to pronounce this correctly. But to give you a little context, Habakkuk is this really tiny book in the first part of the Bible, and it's written by this guy named Habakkuk. All right? And try going on the playground at recess with that name. He probably got beat up a lot. So for the purposes of today, we are going to call him Hobby, because I'm still not convinced that I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And I want to set the stage for you. So Hobby and his fellow countrymen, they find themselves in a place where they're feeling pretty lost. They have situation after situation where they feel like God has not come through for them in the way that they hoped, or even in the timing that they hoped he would. Can anyone else relate to that? And in this book, Hobby is having this conversation with God that he writes down for us. And he kind of approaches God like this. He's like, hey, man, this world that you made, messed up. There is injustice, there's oppression, there's conflict. Nobody is getting along. Sound familiar? And so he asks God, why aren't you saving us from this? In other words, he's asking, how long until we're found? Hobby then spends some time telling these stories of times where God has come through for them, of recounting God's faithfulness. And he ends the book with these verses. Even though the fig trees have no blossoms and there are no grapes on the vines, Even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. If Hobby was alive today, I think these verses would have sounded something like this. Even though my kids have never come to know God, even though I'm still searching for a job that will pay the bills, even though I didn't get an A on the big exam, yet I will praise the Lord. Now, if I were writing these verses, and I think if we're honest, if many of us, I would have probably written it like when I pass that test, when I get that job, when my kids come to know God, when all of those things happen, then I will rejoice in the Lord. But not Hobby. No, he has come to understand what, if we consider ourselves followers of Jesus, is so important for us to learn. And that is, no matter our current circumstances, we can live an even though I will life. Even if God doesn't answer our prayers how we wanted, he promises us something that is so much more than our answered prayers. He promises us himself. He promises that no matter what we are facing, he will be our strength, which means we no longer have to force our way through the world trying to make things work because he's got it under control. When I was lost on the beach, it was really hard to get my bearings. By the time I realized I was lost, it was like, there's no going back now. I'm just going to keep walking. And I looked this way, and all I could see was endless sand. And if I look this way, it's like the ocean, and the tide starts coming in. And I just was like, okay, just 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other. But what I couldn't see was what started to happen when my parents realized that I was lost. The number of people that rallied around them, starting to look for me and search for me. But just because I couldn't see it didn't mean that it wasn't happening. And when we find ourselves in circumstances where we are lost and anxious and depressed and confused, and we're just wondering how we're going to make it through, God is doing the very same thing for us. He is moving and working in ways that we can't understand. And so we can have hope and rejoice in the fact that no matter the situation that we are facing, he is working all things together for our ultimate good. No matter our current circumstances, we can live an even though I will life because God gives us himself, his presence, his peace. And notice that these verses don't say, even though all of these things around me are failing, I will rejoice in my circumstances. No, it says, I will rejoice in the Lord. And this requires a perspective shift for us because I think so many of us are used to deciding how good we think God is by how good our circumstances are. And what these verses are saying is, hey, you actually have to flip that. We start to view our circumstances through the lens of God's goodness. And that doesn't mean that we pretend like everything is perfect all the time. That's not faith. That is just delusion, but it does mean that you can make an active decision that no matter your current circumstance, you can live an even though I will life. Even though I can't remember the last time my parents asked me how I was really doing, I will rejoice in the Lord. Even though every single job that I interview for right now calls me back and tells me that I'm not a right fit, I will rejoice in the Lord. Even though that healing hasn't come yet, I will rejoice in the Lord. Not because our circumstances are good, but because God is good. And we can use stories of his past faithfulness, of times where he has come through for us and for the people around us to remind us that because he came through for us in the past, he will come through for us again. And that's why it's so important for you to get around some other people in a J group this summer. We don't talk about it all the time because we want you to add one more thing to your calendar. It's so you can get around some people who've seen God come through for you and can remind you of that when you need it most. That they can look you in the eye and say, hey, I know that this situation feels hopeless and you don't know how it's going to work out. But remember that time that God came through for you? Remember how he gave you his presence? Remember how you experienced a peace that you have never experienced before? Remember that he loves you, that he is for you? Just remember. Because no matter what your current circumstance, you can live an even though I will life. Thank you.
Yeah, can we keep giving it up for Alyssa real quick? Actually, amazing job. You guys might not know this, but Alyssa is actually one of my leaders, and because she loves public recognition so much, I just want to call her out real quick and thank you. You have such a gift for ministering to people, and you've done such a good job of teaching me how to do that, and that really comes through in your communication, so thank you for that today. I also want to thank Pastor Mark and our lead team. Guys, can we give it up for our pastors? Show them some love. Yeah, the way they serve our church. And we got Mark McDonald is going to be talking after me. Anytime this guy has a word, you know I'm listening. So sorry, but for right now, you're going to put up with me. So how's everyone doing? Yeah, I'm doing great. Like Abby said, I actually graduated college yesterday. So yeah, thanks. No more graduation ceremonies. I'm done sitting through those. I'm so happy. But yeah, it's Memorial Day. We're going to honor everyone who's given their lives in sacrifice and service to our country to fight for our freedoms. And we're also going to celebrate the unofficial start of summer. In between this and some of my graduation festivities that I've been celebrating over the past couple of days, it kind of has me thinking about some of my favorite holidays to celebrate. Does everyone have a favorite holiday or one that you really like to celebrate? I kid you not, in elementary school, I had a music teacher. Her name was Mrs. Seiler, and her favorite holiday, hands down, she was obsessed with it, was Groundhog Day. Like the Bill Murray movie. February 2nd was a wild time back in music class at elementary school, and I do love Groundhog Day. And if there are any Groundhog Day people in the room, I don't mean you any offense by this, but my favorite holiday is not Groundhog Day. It's actually Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. It's great. But there's something that's really special about it, especially since I moved out of my parents' place. Every time I come home to them and we spend the day together, and we have all kinds of fun traditions. Like we play yard games, and there's this family from down the street that we're really close with. We invite them over, spend the whole day with them. We watch football, and we climb up on our roof and throw pumpkins on the driveway. I started that one when I was about 12 years old, but we still do it. But my favorite part of the whole day is the meal. I'm actually not allowed to help with any of the cooking or the cleaning on Thanksgiving. And it's not just because I'm a nightmare in the kitchen, and I am. And it's not because I haven't tried to help, but my parents have made it clear to me that is their gift to me on Thanksgiving. Yeah, my parents are really great. It's actually something I'd love to do for my kids one day. But there's just something so special about that. And I actually became lactose intolerant over the past couple of years. If that happened to you, you know the bummer that is. But a lot of the dishes that my mom makes have a lot of dairy and butter and cheese and stuff in them. But over the past couple of years, she's developed new recipes for them, and she makes it just like a special version just for me that I get to have. And coconut cream pie is my favorite, and my mom came up with a lactose-free coconut cream pie recipe, so I get a whole pie to myself on Thanksgiving, and it tastes just as good as the real thing. It's awesome. And my dad, he does all the dishes by himself, and when we're all, maybe having another glass of wine or a slice of pie after dinner, he goes and does the dishes, and it's a lot of work, and he does it all by himself just for us so that we can enjoy the day. And so I want to pose this question. Would it make sense for me to come home, have this feast set before me, custom made for me, with a seat at the table just for me, and then to say, no, thank you, I'm not going to take my seat, I don't want any of the food, I'm going to crawl on the floor and fight with my dog for stale crumbs? Probably not, right? That would be ridiculous. But yet, spiritually, I do this all the time. And as wonderful as my parents are, I assure you, I'm extremely thankful for them. I love them so much. Actually, they're watching online this morning, so Mom and Dad, I love you. I honor you. Thank you so much for all you've done in my life. Give it up for my parents. But the thing is, compared to my Father in heaven, they're nothing. And the juicy turkey and fancy wine that I enjoyed last Thanksgiving dinner is child's play compared to the kind of pleasure that our God has in store for us. So to demonstrate what I mean, we're going to have a look at a psalm from the Bible. So the psalms are poetry written for God's people to sing, and they explore all kinds of different emotions and what it looks like to worship God through different circumstances in life. And this particular one talks about the idea of pleasure. So it goes, no wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety. For you will not leave my soul among the dead or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. Consider for a moment the last great meal that you had. My parents took me to Red Lobster a few days ago, and it was great. But let's all close our eyes and just think about it. What did the food taste like? What was like the company of the people that you were with? Was there anyone special with you? Think through, what was the atmosphere like? Maybe you were by the water or on vacation or in a nice restaurant. Maybe you were celebrating a special occasion like a wedding or a birthday. And think about that entire experience and what that meant to you. And we can open our eyes, and I think that God custom designed that experience just for you, and that it brought him more delight than you and I can ever imagine to see you enjoy it. Here's the thing. I think a lot of us have this misconception about God that he doesn't really want good things for us. Like, God is primarily a rule follower and a fun killer, and that our problem is that we just want to have too much fun. And if we would just learn to calm down and follow the rules, then maybe God would be happy with us. But I'm here to tell you this morning that couldn't be any further from the truth. See, everything that is truly pleasurable, truly good, truly fun, God designed to point us to him. See, take our meal example. He designed our taste buds and our digestive systems to periodically crave and enjoy food, pointing to our need to be satisfied in his presence. And he designed our brains and our spirits to enjoy connection with friends and family, pointing to our need to be in relationship with him. He designed every good thing in this life to point us to the infinitely greater reality of knowing him. So God has a feast set before us at his table. And when we enjoy these things with hearts that worship God rather than the thing itself, guys, it's unspeakably satisfying. Why would we ever settle for less than this? So there's a feast set before us. Have a seat at the table. And now you might be thinking at this point, Josh, that's really amazing that your life is graduation and Red Lobster and just a bunch of fun experiences, and you just get to worship God and enjoy them. But I don't see a table, and I certainly don't see a feast. And honestly, I feel that way more often than not. And in these situations, I'll believe the lie that God doesn't really know or he doesn't really want what's best for me. And I'll go back to fighting for crumbs on the floor. See, sexual pleasure, food, alcohol, entertainment, rest, exercise, vacation, even work, these things can actually be really amazing gifts from God. But when we take them and we worship them rather than the God who gives them to us, it leaves us broken and shackled and hopeless. But here's the good news. There's good news for all of us like me who have settled for less than God's best for us, who have settled for the crumbs, is that God sees us in our pain and he loves us more than we can imagine. And there's a feast set before you at his table and you have a spot with your name on it. No wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety, for you will not leave my soul among the dead or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. See, Jesus, who is and always was God, He came down to earth. He put on human skin and lived a human life just like us. But in his life, he lived it perfectly. And this was on our behalf. We could never do this. And then he went to the cross willingly and was publicly executed. And guys, when he did this, he took on all of the punishment that we deserve for our crumb settling, for everything that we've ever said, thought, or done that was dishonoring to God and hurtful to us and left our world a broken place. And we all have these things. And when God did this, he made it so that through faith in Jesus alone, plus no effort on our part, we can be in relationship with God. We can know him. We can have a seat at his table and enjoy being in his presence. And he didn't do this. He didn't go on the greatest, most costly rescue mission of all time just so that you could learn to follow the rules. No, he wants your heart, and he really knows, and he really wants what's best for you. So I want to challenge us this morning. Where have you stopped believing that God really wants what's best for you? And maybe you've never believed that before, and I'm so happy to tell you, you can actually start today. We're going to talk about what that looks like at the end of the gathering. But for right now, where have you stopped believing that God really wants what's best for you? Maybe in your attitude, or at your job, or in school, or in your sex life, or in your marriage, or in a dating relationship, or friendship, or even in watching a movie and eating Chick-fil-A on a Saturday night. Where are you not saying, God, I want to invite you completely into this experience, completely into this relationship, trust you as my king, and know that you really know and really want what's best for my life? So have a seat at the table and stop settling. Now, I really hope that some of us are just super fired up, and it's Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to go home tonight, and we're going to invite God into our marriages and our friendships and even our Memorial Day cookouts in new ways, and we're going to eat hot dogs and be like, God, this tastes amazing. Thank you so much for how you've designed my body to enjoy this, and thank you for my family and my spouse, and I love them so much, and they look good right now, and thank you for all that you've given me in life. But I also know this as well. Some of us are hearing this little voice in the back of our heads, and it's probably going something like this. You really think that you have a spot at God's table? You know that pile of crumbs, that same one. You've gone back to it so many times, and you're never going to be able to stop. And I know this because the entire time I've been working on this message, that's what I've been hearing. And when Pastor Abby asked me to speak this morning, she told me, Josh, we want you to share something that God's been speaking to you. And a couple days ago when I was working on this, I had one of those moments, and it might look a little different than you would expect. I was sitting around, I was working on my message. I was really tired, and my heart just wasn't in it. And I felt a really strong urge to watch a movie. So I did. I grabbed my room. I said, hey, dude, you want to watch a movie? He said, yeah, sure. So we settled on Taken. It's a Liam Neeson movie. Has anyone seen Taken? It's great. Awesome movie. So Liam Neeson is like this super cool like spec ops guy. He's got all these special skills, and his daughter gets kidnapped. And the whole movie is him just going on this like guns blazing rescue mission to save his daughter, and he gets her back in the end. And as my head hit the pillow that night, I was reflecting on that, and I think some of you need to hear this too, and I definitely needed to hear it. God told me, Josh, you are not the bad guy. You are my child. You're the daughter in the movie, actually, and man, I'm coming after you in ways that make what Liam Neeson did in that movie look like child's play. I will stop at nothing to have your heart and to have you back, no matter the circumstance, no matter how many times you've settled for crumbs, no matter what it is in your life that's holding you back from me. Paul puts this so well in the book of Romans. I added this yesterday. I don't know if we have it on there. But in Romans 16, chapter 20, it says, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. And no matter how many times you've messed up, no matter how many times you've messed up, no matter what it is, that's promised to you as a follower of Jesus unconditionally. The God of peace will soon crush drug addiction under your feet. The God of peace will soon crush pornography under your feet. The God of peace will soon crush anxiety and depression under your feet. The God of peace will soon crush pride under your feet. The God of peace will soon crush whatever it is that's keeping you, his beloved child, from enjoying him fully under your feet. So no matter how many times you've settled for crumbs, have a seat at the table and stop settling.
Wow. And I have to follow that. So amazing. And I don't know about you guys, but thank you, Josh. You just pointed out how hungry I really am. Good morning, Journey family. Good morning to everyone who's watching online and those who are in the room. As I said, my name is Mark McDonald, and I have the pleasure to serve in worship and also in Journey City Music. As a matter of fact, have you downloaded the latest single that we put out called On My Side? Have y'all? And also, if you guys did you guys enjoy the last song that the worship team did today? Good news is that song is actually releasing this Friday, so you have an opportunity to go and pre-save that. And that song is called You Are Here, so you can look that up and online to all streaming platforms. And I also have to thank our amazing pastors, Mark and Susie, who are just tremendous people, excellent leaders, and our teaching team. They are so amazing. Don't they do a good job around here? Don't they? So I've been involved in worship for a very long time, so I like to do awkward things from time to time to make people uncomfortable. So I need everybody to look that direction. You see the gentleman sitting behind the half wall back there? His name is Greg. I want to shout out our sign guy. And I do that because you never really pay attention to what's going on until you hear feedback or something, and all of a sudden it's... But no, you do such a great job, you and your team. Greg, I love you, man. So I want to begin with the story of Moses. Anybody heard of Moses? You may have seen him in the old movies, the guy who had the staff that hit it, and the seas opened up, and the people walked on dry land, and he said, let my people go, and all those good things. That's Moses. There's a part of his story I wanted to share with you guys today. So through circumstances, Moses, who's Hebrew, and was living in Egypt at the time with his family, and the Hebrews were actually slaves in this country, but he had an opportunity through circumstances that he was actually raised in the Egyptian palace as part of their family. So when he got older, he was walking through the kingdom, and he saw a fellow Hebrew man who was a slave being abused by an Egyptian slave master, and Moses lost it. So he beat the guy up to the point where he killed him. He committed murder. So he saw what he did. He was afraid for his life because he realized, I'm not really Egyptian. This is a privilege for me. I have to get out of here. And so he fled the country and went out into the wilderness. So to go forward, Moses actually became a shepherd. And so he's walking around the desert with sheep and everything, and he sees a bush that had caught on fire, which it's normal for him. He's in the desert, hot sand, hot sun, dry leaves, poof, things catch on fire. However, in this instance, it wasn't being consumed. So it drew his attention to the bush. So he walks over to the bush, and all of a sudden he hears his voice, Moses, and he's like, whoa. And so he begins to have a conversation with this bush. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a suburbanite. I don't do heat. I'm not built for hot weather. I'm sorry. That's not what I do. Give me a 5-star or a 6-star hotel and some AC and a pool. I'm good. But Moses actually was talking to the bush, and he learned he was actually talking to God. So God tells him, I have a job for you. I want you to go back to Egypt, the place that you just escaped, and I actually want you to go up to Pharaoh and tell him that I said, let my people go, free my people. And so Moses is having a hard time with that. He's like, wait a minute, God, you want me, the one who fled the country, to go to Pharaoh and tell them to let your people go? Nah, bro, that's not happening. So he goes back and forth with God about that, and they're having an argument about it, and he's debating God. And I could put myself in Moses' place. It's like, have you ever had something happen to you or did something in your past where you're ashamed of it? You don't ever want to revisit that thing again? Can anybody relate to that online? Can you relate to that? Give me a thumbs up. Is there something about you that either a character flaw or just something quirky about you that you just do not want people to know? So you're going to tuck that thing away. Can anybody relate? So can you imagine the weight that Moses must have felt when God told him, hey, I have an assignment for you? And so he continued to give God many reasons why he was not the right man for the job. In fact, the Bible says in Exodus 4, verses 10 through 12, it says, but Moses pleaded with God, O Lord, I'm not very good with words. I have never been, and I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled. And I love how God responds. And the Lord asked Moses, who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether a person whether people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. Still at this point in the conversation, Moses was not convinced. God had even said, hey, I'm gonna do miracles through you. He demonstrated, throw your staff on the ground and turn into a snake, pick it back up, all this weird stuff that's happening. And Moses is like, no, I'm still not convinced. You see, if we look back in Moses' past, we remember he killed a guy in Egypt. Ain't no way in the world I'm going back there. Plus, it's a new Pharaoh. He don't know me. I don't know him. He don't know I came from the family. He's not going to look at me and say, hey, fam, welcome back. He's like, no. First of all, who are you? And why are you here? So I actually had a dream several years ago. One of those good sleeps, the good sleeps. And I had a dream that night, and in this dream, I had walked into this house, and my emotion from the dream made it feel like either this was my house or a place I was familiar with. So I walk into the room. To the left, there's this living room, and there's this huge lion just sitting there. Weird, right? But my response to it was, I look at the lion looked at me, and I'm like, what's up? And the lion looks back at me and is like, yo, what's up? And so I keep it moving. I go into the kitchen, and all of a sudden, I'm in this kitchen, and this thing starts to chase me. So I'm running through this house while this thing is chasing me. It wasn't the lion, it was something else. So I'm like ducking behind corners, looking around the corner, and this thing's like still looking at me, and I'm running at breakneck speed to get away from this thing. So after a while, I got upset, and I stopped, and I looked at this thing, and I said, "What are you?" And this is what the thing looked like. So I woke up the next morning, I got ready for work, and it was on my mind all day as I was at work, and it hit me. Why was I not afraid of the lion? That's weird, right? There's like a whole big lion sitting in the living room, and I'm running from, anyway. So it bothered me the rest of the day to the point where I contacted a friend of mine. I was like, "Hey, I need to share my heart with you." They were a trusted person, and that's has a great relationship with God. And so I confided in them what happened, and they said, "You know, God actually gave me the answer to your dream." They said, "Say it again." So I told them the whole dream, and they explained to me that the lion was actually Jesus. That's why you weren't afraid of it. Now, the biblical principle behind that, in the New Testament, Jesus is referred to as the Lion of Judah. So that's the reason why that made sense to me. And they said the ostrich that you were running from was your awkwardness. You've been running from the things that God has been calling you to. You've been feeling like you don't fit in. You've been feeling like you're socially awkward. You've been feeling like you don't come from the right family. Basically, Mark, it's your anxiety. And I'm like, man, isn't it crazy that it would be an ostrich? Think about it. It's a thing that buries its head in the sand when it's scared. And if I'm honest, if I wasn't so consumed about the issues I was having at the time, I would have remembered sitting in the living room was my answer. Jesus was sitting there the entire time. Had he just roared one time, that ostrich would have went running. But I had failed to call on the one who could face my issue with me. Remember Moses? He had a past he was running from, and he debated the very one who had the answer, who could resolve his issue. Let me ask you today, as I'm wrapping up, what is your ostrich? What is that thing that's chasing you around? What has your head buried in the sand? Something you've done in your past? Is it a secret habit you don't want anybody to find out about? Is it joining a J group because you don't want to be the awkward new person? Is it leading a J group because you don't feel worthy enough or qualified? Perhaps you've been coming to the journey for a while, or you've been trying to figure out this whole Jesus thing. Maybe it's taking the next step in accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. And if you're new to church, maybe it's just taking the next step in coming back and find out what this Jesus thing is all about. I've got great news for you guys. I have the remedy. The answer has always been with you. Always been with you. In fact, the Bible says he will never leave you, nor will he ever forsake you. You're not alone. So as I close, I challenge you to stop running and face what's been chasing you head on, because you're not alone. In fact, thank you, Lord. In fact, what I love about the character of Jesus, he takes your past, your sins, your struggles, and he makes them platforms to give your testimony. Don't we serve an amazing God? And he didn't stop there, because in the story with Moses, he didn't send Moses out by himself. He said, you know what, Moses, I'm sick of hearing you're complaining. Why don't you take your brother Aaron with you? God's not going to make you do it by yourself. And you're right now in a church full of people, both here and online. You're in a church full of people who's willing to take that journey with you. So together, let's stop and face what we're running from. And let us run to the one who can fix it all.
First, incredible job. That was amazing. Thank you, guys. Thank you for sharing that with us. And one of the things that I loved about what each of you shared today was this reminder in some way that we've all been lost in our lives. And I can relate to that feeling. Maybe you can too. And this week when I was in my slot and spot, my time and place with God, I am reading through the 1-year Bible. It's something many of our leaders are doing together. Every day, just reading a little bit of the Old Testament, the New Testament, a psalm, and a proverb. And this week I've been reading from John 14, where Jesus knows what's about to happen. He's about to go to the cross, but his disciples don't totally get it. And he's trying to explain to them what they need to know, kind of give them all those directions. And it says in John chapter 14, verse 6, he says to them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And I was just struck what incredible news that is for every single one of us. Because here's what I know. Some of you today feel like you've lost your way. Some of you are convinced that you've lost your way. Some of you have other people in your life that you love and respect who are looking at you and saying you've lost your way. And you might feel hopeless. I remember being 19 years old and I'd heard about Jesus my whole life. I knew of Jesus, but I never really knew him for myself. And the good news here today is that you are never too far gone for God. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. You're not going to find him on your own, but you can find your life in him. And so I want to encourage you this weekend. If you've never made that decision to put your faith in Jesus once and for all, you've been trying to figure out how to get to God on your own, I've got good news. You don't have to do another single thing. You don't have to jump through any hoops. You don't have to say all of the right words. You don't have to look a certain way or have a certain attitude. All you have to do is confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord. And I want to invite you to make that decision this weekend. So we're all going to pray. We're going to open our hearts big to God. And if that's you, pray these words with me. God, we thank you for your power and your presence. And in this moment, I will stop doing life on my own. I'm not going to keep trying to find my own way. I'm not going to follow my own truth. I'm not going to try to figure out life in what I know. But no, in this moment, I proclaim that Jesus is leader and Lord of my life. I give all control, all anxiety, all sin, all fear. I give it all to you in this moment, and I replace it with the everlasting peace and hope and joy of Jesus Christ. And as we all just stay focused in this moment together, if you made that decision today, you said, okay, I'm in, I'm making Jesus leader and Lord of my life, would you just raise your hand? Yeah. If you're online, you can type faith in the chat. You can put those hands down. And Jody, will you help me